So, Asian reparations explained? Coming right up. What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Common Sense Logic Reason. As always, I want to say thank y'all for joining me today. So anytime I get into the discussion of reparations to black people, I always like to bring up the Asian reparations. And the reason why is because Asian reparations is one of the, if not the biggest excuse that black people use for why blacks in America should get reparations. You know, they gave these Asian people reparations, but they won't give reparations to black people. Also, they like to talk about all the, foreign aid that we give to all these countries, which is a different matter from reparations. Anyway, so I'm going to explain the Asian reparations because this is a type of race hustler rhetoric. And by the way, this is an example of a historical crime. But this is another perfect example of black people arming themselves with the example of race hustler rhetoric, but never being able to defend it. In most cases, don't even know anything about it, can't even explain it. So I'm going to explain the Asian reparations. Now, back during World War II, as y'all know, we were in a war against Japan, and we officially got into the war after Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. Now, during that time, we had a sizable Japanese American community, and most of these people were like first generation Japanese Americans. Now, back then, a lot of Americans feel that these people would be more loyal to the emperor and more loyal to Japan than it would be to America, and possibly they can attempt to try to sabotage the war effort, wage, attacks here and there, terrorist attacks. So they basically took these Japanese Americans and they put them into internment camps for the duration of the war to make sure that they wouldn't be a problem. Of course, something like that would be an absolute no-no today. The left would just go absolutely ape bananas if something like that were to happen. And I agree, conservative people will be opposed to that as well in today's America. But back then they did it. They felt the need to do it. Now, the problem is that a lot of these Japanese Americans lost wealth, land, shops and stuff. They lost a lot of wealth and stuff and had their life turned upside down because of the relocation to the concentration camps. All right, these internment camps. I won't say concentration, but because of relocating all these Japanese Americans into these internment camps, they lost a lot of land and wealth and had to pick up their lives and pick up the pieces after the war effort. Now, back in 1989, the government decides to give these people back, or try to attempt to give them back what was taken from them. So the government gave reparations to basically who? Well, it was estimated that about 120,000 Japanese Americans spent time in internment camps. Now, at that time, there was roughly about half the people were still alive. Roughly about 60,000 people, those Japanese Americans, were still alive. So the government actually gave the reparations to those Japanese Americans, 60,000 Japanese Americans who were still alive at the time. There were no reparations that went to the estate or the family members of the 60,000 who had passed on and died. So it was only for those who were still alive at the time. So when black people use Asian reparations as for a reason why blacks today should get reparations, that right there destroyed the whole argument. Because by that same logic, no black person was alive today would get these reparations, because the reparations would have only had to went to those slaves, newly freed slaves, or those blacks who actually spent time as a slave. Since there's no black person today who spent time as a slave, how can anything go to their estate similar to what the Asian reparations were? But then again, black folks, you don't know anything, but you say when you don't know anything, when you're ignorant, you walk right into it like that. Now, here's the problem with the whole Asian reparations thing. Again, this money was only paid out to Japanese Americans. So these aren't Asian reparations, but they're Japanese reparations. Again, if you look at what falls under the banner of Asian, all the cultures and nationalities that fall under the banner of Asian, I mean, it's a large group of people. You got all the Oriental people, including all the Japanese, Chinese, Taiwanese, Vietnamese. You got the Koreans, North and South Koreans. These are all people who fall under the banner of Asian. And then you also have the Filipino people, who also, I guess you can say, will fall under the banner of Asian, I guess you can say, or Oriental. But then you also have Arabic people fall under that banner. You have Indians, people from India are considered Asian. People in the West Indies are considered Asian. So there are a lot of people who fall under the banner of Asian. So these are just Japanese reparations, not Asian reparations. So certainly you cannot use Asian reparations as a reason for why Asian people are doing so well in America, because oftentimes when or anyone say how well Asians are doing, they bring up the reparations, but that's not an excuse, because these are not only were these reparations paid only to Japanese Americans, but only 60,000 Japanese Americans, and I'm pretty sure at that time there were millions of Japanese in America. But anyway, so what do we have? Number one, these reparations were only paid to Japanese Americans, and only those Japanese Americans who were still alive at the time they gave the reparations, who also spent time in internment camps. And these Japanese Americans were already pretty much doing very well for themselves. This was just a matter of giving them which actually personally taken from them, not taken from their great-great-grandparents during slavery 150 years ago. So anytime you hear anybody make the kid cry about Asian reparation and try to use Asian reparations or Japanese reparations reality, I would say first correct them that it's Japanese Americans. But anytime any blacks try to use this as case why blacks today should get reparations, well, now you know, and knowing this half the battle. And as always, y'all, until next time.